a special guest, John Grace. He's an expert on planning your financial future. In fact, John Grace is a founder and president at Investors Advantage Corporation. Now, he has a cool website, ybpoor.com. YBPOR, John. Welcome, John. Welcome to Central Valley Talk. By the way, John, one thing I want to talk about, you have something special for the frontline workers. But before we get to that, so many people I talk to have a lot of money right now for a couple of reasons. One is the government gave us a bunch of money. And second, we don't have anything to spend money on. So I'm thinking maybe this is a good time. People should talk to someone like you about getting their future in order. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's a fine idea, Mike. And I think what's happening right now is, like you say, people aren't spending the way they used to spend. They're not as busy as they used to be. And sometimes they're actually taking the opportunity to go, let's not only look at our house, but our financial house, if you will, to see how we can get things in better order. So we love working with folks who have that kind of an attitude, because there's really three things that you're trying to accomplish. It's how are you going to make sure you have sufficient income after your last paycheck? That's number one. Number two, in the event something were to happen to either breadwinner, married or not, is immaterial. How will the survivor know that they can continue living at the same level that they were living, even though they've lost an income? Because oftentimes that changes the picture drastically, very quickly. And then third, if there are children in the equation or grandchildren in the equation, how can we put a plan together so that all the adults in the room can see that Junior and Missy can finish college without anybody having to go into debt? But without a plan, it's you're pretty much throwing darts in the dark.
And for all the people who gone their whole life from paycheck to paycheck and all of a sudden they have a little money, this would be a good time to think about it, I would think, and to talk to John Grace, by the way. And now, by the way, John's down in Westlake Village, but he talks to people all over the world. So wherever you're watching from, you can contact John Grace. And he's a very, very nice guy. I recommend him. Super guy to talk to. Now, a bunch of people are taking their unemployment, a lot of money, by the way, and there's a little box you could check when you do your certification on unemployment saying, do you want us to do withholdings for the federal government, or do you want to just keep all the money and pay later? A lot of people are doing that. Is there a way at the end of the year to put that money into like some kind of retirement and defer the taxes?
Well, we work with primarily, people in the U.S., only with people because of the U.S.
Okay.
securities
I
laws.
said all over the world, but all right.
Yeah, we talk with people. Happy to talk with people. It's just we can only do business with Los Americanos,
Okay.
these United States of America. But yeah, it's always appropriate. No matter, so many people say, well, I've lost so much time, there's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do. And it's nice just to see a balance in an account, particularly if it happens to be growing. But so many of us have lived so long, paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
We are so used to doing that, it's kind of a hard habit to break. But yes, to the extent that there is earned income, there are always places to put money aside, either on a before tax basis in a traditional retirement account, or in an after tax basis in a Roth account, for example. And the distinction between the two is, in the first case, before tax, you may be able to deduct the full contributions that you make. There may be an employer contribution as well. If you're working for yourself, there would be no employer contribution, but that's a way to set aside money on a before tax basis. For young people, though, we suggest that they look at using a Roth, primarily because with the traditional retirement account, what the advisors and the CPAs, we're all trying to be helpful, recommend is, Mike, put all your money into a before tax position. You get tax-free growth. Your account may very well be, 20, 30 years, 20, 30% more than it would have been had it been in a taxable account. But what we failed to tell you is when you, now at 72, when you reach 72 and a half, now the IRS requires you to, one, start taking withdrawals, and two, recognize that those withdrawals only increase for the rest of your life. In fact, if it's you get to be 90 in your mid 90s or so, I believe the withdrawal rate now is about 11% that you must take out. And yes, you must pay the tax. And no, there's nothing you can do about that. So a lot of people don't mind that situation, when the withdrawals are pretty modest, like in the early 70s, but stick around, and many of them are angry because I don't want the money. I don't want to pay the tax. I don't know. And then the account went down and I have to increase my withdrawals. So the Roth is one way where people won't get the tax deduction, do not pay the tax on any growth, but it's probably the only place under current tax law where folks can take withdrawals and know that one, I can decide if and when I want to take withdrawals, and two, when and if I do, I know that the money's already been taxed, so I won't be taxed on taking the money out.
Well, I tell you, John, by the way, if you're just tuning in, John Grace is the founder and president at Investors Advantage Corporation, and he has a great website, ybpoor.com. Go check it out. You're talking about Roth IRA and this IRA and that IRA. One thing I pride myself on is trying to know everything about everything, but I can't. I have to do my job. But you seem to be an expert on this. That's why where you come in handy is you know what you're talking about. We don't have to go learn it from scratch.
Yes, well, we've only been doing this since 1979. It's hard for me to believe that as well. So
Wow.
this isn't our first time to the rodeo. So we like for people to understand what it is they're doing. We think in terms of, every portfolio is customized 100%, but there's three tenets that we hold in when we work with people. One is to make the portfolio strong. Secondly is to make the portfolio safe. And thirdly is to make the portfolio simple. So, strong from the standpoint of how can we absorb market uncertainty? All right, that's number one. Number two is how can we make sure that we avoid as much risk as possible? In fact, what kind of risk are we willing to accept is a very good question. We have the folks we have the pleasure of working with answer, so they know what they're doing. And then three, that falls right in line, we want them to know what you own and why you own it, as opposed to just throwing darts in the dark and hoping that you make some money. But again, not recognizing, we're just working with, in fact, young couple, frontline workers. We're doing plans for free for frontline workers, both about the mid-30s, and they want to make work optional at 70. And we help them see to get the equivalent of $100,000, which is what would be sufficient for them. In 35 years or so, their goal becomes $2.6 million.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, it's a big number, but here's the good news: because they have time on their side and they're taking advantage of the time that they have. What the contribution looks like is seeing, okay, then that means we need to set aside 15% or 15,000 of 100 every year. We want to get a 7% return. In the event those two things happen, we can see we will arrive on time safely with 2.6. Now, it'll never be perfect, and there are adjustments that have to be made, but at least for the first time, they see the target, as opposed to so many of us, as I say, that are left in the dark.
Yeah, we just wake up every day and say, let's see what happens. So now
Yes, we'll take being prepared over unprepared every time.
Now this guy, the president of the United States, keeps saying something about, hey, the stock market's up and all the people with retirement accounts should be happy. Is there some truth in that? How's it been going for that?
Well, this is true. I mean, it's an interesting year, Mike. I mean, the market is all over the place. I was just looking earlier today. Year to date, the Dow, the top 30 companies in the country, it just got into positive territory at 1.5%. 1.5%. Okay. The NASDAQ, on the other hand, is up almost 34% last time I looked. Again, that's from January 1 through an hour ago or so for the year. But the real issue is that a good majority of Americans have really little or no money in the stock market, particularly minorities. I mean, the amount of money that minorities have in the stock market is negligible compared to Caucasians, okay? But it's probably not 50% of us that have any money in the stock market. So he's talking to certainly the one percenters. He's talking to the people who are very wealthy. Yes, they're having a magnificent year. Some gains are really ridiculous so far this year. But again, most of us, in fact, I saw one study, this was a year before COVID, Mike, that made the case that 40% of Americans would be destitute after the loss of one paycheck.
Yeah.
40% destitute. So it's a great point you make, because to me, it's like looking at the puzzle from all of the pieces in the puzzle that comprise the puzzle, as opposed to just one little corner. He's talking to one little corner. We got to look at the whole puzzle to see that some people are doing extraordinarily well, the rest of us not so much.
Yeah. Now, we're running out of time. I want to get to one more issue about the frontline workers. But before we do that, I just want to encourage anybody watching, go to the website, ybpoor.com. It's right there on the screen right below us. It's free to go to the website and just find stuff out and learn a little bit about where you should be, and maybe talk to John about how you can get to where you should be in a couple of years. Now, I got to tell you, John, I'm 61. I never thought I'd, when you're 30, 32, 40, you don't think 61, that's years down the road. Came pretty fast, I got to tell you. Now, you got something special going for the frontline workers. Tell us about that.
Well, yes. I mean, it seems like we expect so much from them and they give so much to us and they get very little in return. And that bothered me to the point where I said, I'd like to be able to do something. And then it dawned on me in talking to one of our physicians that it might be in order for us to just do free financial plans for all frontline workers. Okay. So that's what we're doing right now. If you feel you're a frontline worker, we'll accept that and we'll go on a Zoom call and spend like an hour and a half or so to see what does it take for you to make work optional on your time frame with the income you want when you want it. Two, if something happens to one of the breadwinners, how will the survivor know that financially it's a non-event? And three, in the event there are children in the equation, how can we make sure you see the path for them to finish school without anybody being in debt, as again taking advantage of time on our side.
Yeah. Now, so if you're a frontline worker, now might be the time to get a hold of John. How do you want them to reach you? Should they go to the website?
They can absolutely go to the website. They can give us a call. There's a way to contact us, in an email. Any one of those will work out just fine.
Very good. ybpoor.com if you're a frontline worker. A lot of people are getting ahead right now, even the frontline workers, because they're some of the only people working right now. So a lot of people have extra cash. It's time to think about making that cash work for the future. Now, you said something about making work optional.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm 61. I have no option. I have to work, for the next till I'm 70 or 75 years old. So.
Okay. So we would take that and say, okay, Mike, you make it 70, make it 75. Either one is just a fine number or age. Okay. Let's look to see what kind of income you'd want when you are 70 and at 75, so that you can see what kind of contributions you need to make, what kind of return you need to generate. But now you see, I'm on track. If I want to stop at 70, this is what it would take. If I want to make it 75, this is what it would take. But now I know I can afford to stop. And let's understand that many of us are going to be working much longer than traditionally, like our parents. But when people do stop working earlier than expected, typically it's often the case it's a healthcare issue, either of the worker or someone in the family. So now, we have to leave work earlier than we expected, and we didn't put aside what we should have. And now here we are, 30 days away from an OS moment that stands for oh shucks.
Oh shucks. Now I just throw myself as an example to young people. Don't be like me and wait till it's too late. But you're saying it's not too late.
It's never too late.
Nice.
And to your point, this couple where we're talking about setting aside 15%, we showed them many times people don't get serious until their early 40s about setting aside money. And now the amount that needs to be set aside is double what it was that they started just 10 or 15 years sooner.
Yeah, nice.
So, if it's hard today, it's only going to get harder. And as I say, the real question is, what amount of money are you setting aside behind door number one so that you can open that door, stop working, and spend the next 20, 30 years in a place where you're getting the same kind of income from your investments as you were going to work every day to provide the kind of lifestyle that you are experiencing.
Well, John, Grace, we're about out of time. Any last thoughts before we have to go?
Well, let's just say that the markets have been having a very good year. We'll see if this continues, but I'm suggesting that people enjoy the melt up. A lot of young people are getting in the market at this point in time with some of that money you're talking about, Mike. They've not seen a downside. So don't place your bet until you understand why I'm buying, what are those conditions, and under what conditions do I sell, or what percentage do I sell? Because this thing can turn around viciously and we just saw February 19th through March 23rd. That was a 37% loss in the span of just over a month.
Wow.
So, and recognize just to get back to even after we'll round up to 40%, we need a gain of like 66.6%. Do you like those odds? So the point is, identify what kind of loss you can live with, and then invest accordingly so that you can let the market do whatever it does, but it doesn't mean it takes your life savings down to the bottom of the sea like the Titanic.
All right. Well, we got to go. I just say, get a hold of John Grace before you start dumping money into things that you don't know that much about. John Grace knows about it. Go to his website, ybpoor.com. We'll be back with more Central Valley Talk right after this.